We're here at the Hyde Metropolitan by Daycorp. I'm here with CBRE Managing Director for Residential Projects, Dave Milton. How are you, mate?
Great, Mike. Good to see you. Thank you, and thanks for joining us here.
Thanks, mate. Well, look, we're doing something a bit different today. You know, we've taken requests from buyers in terms of the hard questions that they want to know about the project. So we're going to ask you those and really, you know, provide them the opportunity to kind of have a real good look at, you know, what are the drivers, what are the things that they should be thinking about. So we'll get started, eh?
Yep, yeah, definitely. You are aware I'm a little bit biased because I think this will be the preeminent Sydney residential development on this southern end of Hyde Park in the future. So,
well, we like the project as well, and I think you know, there's a lot to like. And so, for those buyers that are thinking about right now, should they buy an established apartment, maybe in the broader area? You know, what would you say to them is the kind of advantage of this project as opposed to that?
Well, I think there's a lot of advantages to this project in the design, the style of the apartments and the views, but it often comes down to the buyer whether they're needing to move now or it's a future move. New design often brings better design, new initiatives, better IT, better security, more functionality. And you know, I'd say to a lot of buyers, if you're going to be living in the city for some time, waiting a small time to get what you want is really more often worth it than compromising on a decision to buy now.
And so with that in mind, I guess, you know, we look back over the past couple of years, it's been a bit of a rocky time for the property market from a pricing standpoint. You know, what would you say to buyers that are thinking about, that uncertain about the interest rates and looking forward in terms of the opportunity now?
I think we're starting to see change in the market already with buyer sentiment. You know, we've had all the banks out forecasting price growth. We've seen a real turnaround in, I'll say, all property pundits and researchers saying the market's changing. We've got an acute shortage of property. Building costs have risen substantially and still rising, and that hasn't fed through yet into asking prices. So if you sort of said, what's the time to buy? It probably is right now where interest rates are nearly at their peak or at their peak. Predicted then to follow a stabilisation, they'll come down. Building prices will continue to rise. And today, if you're bought here, you're locking in on today's price and you're not settling for 3.5 years, 4 years. So the market in 4 years is going to be very different to now, particularly with 975,000 new immigrants expected to arrive in that time in Australia.
It's a crazy amount of, you know, people coming into the country. Clearly we've got a supply shortage with not enough projects coming to market, right?
Enormous supply, like all the stats are. I don't know where people are going to be housed, and there's a big push back to city living. People want the convenience, and so you're starting to see the market where we're getting more and more demand in areas where there's very tight supply.
Yeah, and so, you know, obviously the project is high spec, high-end design, all the rest of it, but Liverpool Street isn't often known as kind of one of those like real prestige streets. You know, what do you think about that?
Well, I think it's overlooked there, and I think it is really a prestige address. You've got Tech Central now with the development of the Atlassian building, and a lot of other high-rise commercial that's going to go in there. That's going to, so over 20 hectares being developed there, and that's a few hundred metres away. You're right, you're very close to the city centre, David Jones, Centre Shopping Centre, but you're on Hyde Park. And if you look at Liverpool Street and the developments, the residential developments that have taken place, they're the most tightly held. And buyers love it here. We've had buyers that we originally sold to in the residents buy in here. We've had buyers that have bought in here that are renting next door. And without doubt, it will become a more and more prestigious address and more tightly held.
And so with the park, obviously, like, huge value add for the project overall. You know, if I was a buyer, one of the things I'd be worried about is getting my view blocked out over time. You know, what would you say to a buyer that also shares my concern with that?
That's one of the beauties of this site. There's the height plane of Elizabeth Street, which is where this building looks over, is governed by the sun plane, allowing winter sun onto the park. So it's not an arbitrary council control, it's locked in stone. So if the sun starts to set in the east, it'll change. But whilst the sun sets in the west, that is the height plane locked in.
And so how does that work? So the government, the council can't change the rules. Why would they make it like that?
Well, you want the sun on Hyde Park so the grass grows.
Fair enough. Yeah.
So you know, that's why it is. It's about amenity, and what happens in most councils, buildings can't be overshadowing parks because it takes away from the amenity and the ability for the park to survive.
You know, I'm really kind of grilling you here. So we've got the park. I'll give you the park. That is definitely a good thing for sure.
And views across the park, out through the heads, the harbour, magnificent views.
And so outside of the park though, what else is there in the area that's kind of worth a mention, do you reckon?
Oh, it's a great location. You've got Surrey Hills on your doorstep. Again, some of the best restaurants, some of the best restaurants and bars in Sydney. You're 5 or 10 minutes to Potts Point. You're right in the heart or right on the edge of the city centre. And then you've got Chinatown a few hundred metres walk. So you walk down, you go downstairs and you can walk in all directions and have, I'll say, the flavours of the world, great choices in entertainment, dining out, and it's walking distance.
And so in terms of the types of buyers that you're seeing come through now already, you know, are you finding it's more of a first home buyer, downsizer, investor? Like what segment is the product really geared up for?
Not first home buyer, mainly more established buyers. That we've had a number of people north and east and inner west that have bought to move in here. We've had a number of buyers in some of the older buildings around the park buy in here to upgrade.
Right.
The apartments are large, high end. They have a 2.9 metre ceilings. There's typically only sort of 3 apartments per floor, so very exclusive. So it really does appeal to that luxury end of the market.
So often with the kind of high, if I'm a buyer and I've got a bit of money to spend, I can kind of choose where I'm going to go.
Yep.
You know, one of the things that would kind of, you know, has been a concern for the apartment market in general is it kind of feeling a bit like enclosed with either low ceiling or smaller rooms. You know, what would you say to the people that would kind of be concerned about that?
Oh, I think this is completely the opposite. This is one of the beauties of the controls on this site. It's a tall, slender tower. It's a small floor plate, so you've only got typically 5 to 2 apartments per floor. And your north and your east is your primary aspect, so you really enjoy the views and the sun. And the way, again, with the buildings that are around you and the way the codes work, you can't be built out. So as you can see in the background here with the view, that's the view you're going to enjoy forever. The ceilings, the codes on this site allowed for a taller building. So whilst there's a maximum of what's called floor space ratio, to use that height, the architects Angelo Candelabras came up with the principle of 2.9 metre ceilings, which you just don't find in new development. Everything is 2.7.
Sure.
It is.
Yeah.
The penthouses have 4 metre ceilings.
Wow.
So you're buying apartments that have wide frontages with these great views, high ceilings, and then the balconies are winter gardens, so they're operable, but they're usable all year round. And one of the things with tall buildings, the higher you get, a little bit more wind. Here it means that you can use the area as indoor-outdoor areas. So really practical and really valuable.
So one of the things that people might be reading in the media, which is a fair concern, is if the developer falls out with the builder, what happens for the buyer, and are they, you know, is that a problem for them? How does it work with this one?
That's one of the beauties of this development. Daycorp are the builder and the developer. They're ICERT rated. They're one of Australia's largest builders. They have an unbelievable track record in delivery, and they're in charge of the quality here. And the principal of Daycorp I spoke to when he bought the site, he sees this as a crowning glory. So there's a lot of emphasis going into the design and what will be the build of this site. It'll really be a spectacular building when developed. So buyers can have full confidence it will be delivered as it's planned.
So lots of people, they talk about this world that we're heading to where no one's going to own a car, but I think the reality for most people is, like, I still want to drive a car if I want to go somewhere. You know, how much does a car park cost with this project? Is it included? Is it extra? You know, what's the story?
I think, again, one of the attractive features of this development is the majority of the apartments have parking, many have double parking, and it's traditional parking. It's not lifted, it's not a stacker. You drive in, park your car, and then the majority of units, again, have additional storage in the basement. So very traditional in that regard, but meets the market. And whilst, the city is putting further and further restrictions on parking, people want a car, and that's, so again, one of the benefits here. I might also add there's going to be a further shortage of residential accommodation in the city, and this is one of the last developments to be approved under the previous planning codes. Council have now put in place controls restricting or reducing the buildable area on sites where they're residential sites. So basically proving up the value as commercial usage, not residential. So what it means is when developers are looking at sites, there'll be more commercial buildings and less residential.
You know, so if it was one of your family members was looking at buying and downsizing into an apartment, looking to buy it off the plan, what would you say to them, and tips would you give them?
Probably, Mike, it's a really great question, because you talk about downsizers, and the words now move to empty nesters and right sizes. And so often what we're getting is people moving out of their family home, wanting a large apartment that replicates a lot of their lifestyle within that home, but without the maintenance and with more convenience. So you've got downsizers moving into something smaller, and so often they think about what's the critical things that they need. They're often looking to save some money to invest somewhere else, buy a country farm or a coastal property. You've got right sizes that are saying, well, we like the size of our house and we want that type of space, so they'll look at larger apartments. You've got retirees again with different needs. I think developers are so much more aware of the nuances of the different markets that they're providing all of the needs those buyers want, like additional storage, larger rooms. Apartments are previously often were criticised for being small or not being adequate in what they provide for a homeowner. We've now got generous robes, larger bathrooms, kitchens that are really functional. A number of apartments will have a butler's kitchen. There's been enormous more focus on design to meet that market's requirements. And then that buyer, what they should be doing is doing research on who the developer is, what their experience is. Do they have the capability? Have they built something like this before? And that's all readily available. Any professional agent will have all of that information. And if they can't answer it, be wary.
One of the key things we're focused on with Urban is helping buyers really look into the track record of a developer and a builder, because we think that is one of the most important things that they should be considering before putting a deposit down.
We're also very focused on the developer, on their capacity to deliver what they're going to be selling, on their past experience. We work with established developers, those with track records that we know the buyer's going to get what they were promised. It's really, really important.
And so what do you think investors should be aware of?
What should an investor be wary about? Well, I think they should be wary of the same things that an owner-occupier is. You know, who's the developer? What's their capacity to deliver? What's the quality of the apartment? But a few more things in investment. There's been strong evidence that properties near good transport solutions have higher rental returns, and rents go up higher than areas that are further removed. So tenants want convenience, close to shopping, transport, make their life easier. So all of those things are really important. But I think the big thing is people do get too focused as to when is the best time to buy. And most investors start to buy when they see a lot of other investors buying. Whereas the time is now. There's a shortage of stock. There's been enormous increase on building prices, but hasn't fed through into sale prices yet. And it's going to, otherwise there will be very little new development. And we've got this enormous immigration coming. And if you read the financial press, they're saying interest rates will have come down starting on the way, tracking down in 12 months. So if you buy today, you're likely to buy a property that will have a rental return 20-25% higher than what it is now. You'll be buying into a market where interest rates are coming down, and you'll be buying into a market where new property is probably 30-40% more expensive to produce. So now is the time to buy.